Spiritual Gumbo, Proper Sacrifice, Part 2. Pops is doing just fine, y'all. Talked to a few different people, as a matter of fact, and got to even tell one of them about what I was just reading. We're in verse 1 of chapter 4. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a soul shall sin, now listen. Now we've just talked about the sacrifices. Now listen to the way that he wants the sacrifices to be brought about per circumstance in a certain way. You know what I mean? Follow this. Verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a soul shall sin unwillingly before the Lord, in any of the commandments of the Lord, from any commandments of the Lord, there's a symbol by that word, in, concerning things which he ought not to do, and shall do some of them, if the anointed priest sin so as to cause the people to sin, or by reason of the people sinning, so if they sin because the people sinned, right? Or however, the priest sinned and they sinned, or the people sinned and then the priest sinned following up, it's all the same. Only the priests can actually do sacrifice for themselves. Verse 3, if the anointed priest sin so as to cause the people to sin, then shall he bring for his sin, which he has sinned, an unblemished calf of the herd of the Lord for his sin. He shall bring the calf to the door of the tabernacle of witness before the Lord, and he shall put his hand on the head of the calf before the Lord, and shall slay the calf in the presence of the Lord. The anointed priest who has been consecrated, or whose hands have been filled or perfected, having received of the blood of the calf, shall then bring it into the tabernacle of witness. And the priest shall dip his finger into the blood, and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before the Lord, over against the holy veil. And the priest shall put of the food, and the priest shall put of the food of the, and the priest shall put of the blood of the calf on the horns of the altar. I don't know why I was thinking of food. on the horns of the altar of the compound of incense, which is before the Lord. Now stop right there. I don't know if we read about that in the last part. I don't remember that. But this is different than them taking the blood and pouring it all the way around the altar. And then you notice they sprinkle it 7 times over against the holy veil, right? And he takes this blood, and now I assume this is because it's the priest, right? Now you can say it's because of the people too, but just we'll listen to all the different offerings that happen, and then you'll see what I'm saying. You know, because I don't know why it was talk about the priest sinning if, like for example, the priests are the ones who interpret the law. If they interpret it wrong, right, and then all the people listen to them and they do something wrong, right, that priest has to go and make atonement for himself and for the people. Now, having said that, people can also sin on their own. And I'm not going to say that they have to do the ritual different, but I'm going to speak to the highest level of the sin from the person who has the most authority, not a person who's from the lower echelon, okay, or the lower levels of the hierarchy within the structure of the children of Israel. Here we go. And we're at verse 4, I want to say. And he shall bring the calf to the door. No, I'm wrong. Verse 6. And the priest shall dip his finger into the blood, and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before the Lord, over against the holy veil. And the priest shall put the blood of the calf on the horns of the altar of the compound incense, which is before the Lord, like right in front of him, which is in the tabernacle of witness. And all the blood of the calf he shall pour out by the foot of the altar of the whole blood offerings. Now listen, did you hear that? Boom. So he's going to take enough blood to sprinkle it right here on the holy veil. He's going to touch the horns, right? And then he's going to take the rest of the blood and then pour it around the altar. All right. Now, why this is so important is because in the other sacrifices, that's not what happened. Right on? They just pour the blood around about. So this is why I'm assuming that this is actually the priest sinning. Some, you get what I mean? Like the highest level of the sin being committed. Because if you know better, you should do better. Once again, knowing better to do better. I can't say like I tied it all together. Don't worry. When we get to the part of the Leviticus, when we're talking about shaving your face, right, and cutting your hair, right, we'll see how people feel. We'll keep going, and then we'll see who's a bold, bald-faced liar about what. Going on. Verse 8. No, verse 7. And all the blood of the calf shall he pour out by the foot of the altar of whole burnt offerings, which is by the doors of the tabernacle of witness. So this is obviously a distance away, because the veil is right by the Holy of Holies, which is right by the Ark of the Covenant. Anyway, let me not get too carried away, but I'm trying to give y'all an understanding. Boom. This is the entrance, right? Okay. This is the altar. Way back over here would be where the Holies of Holies is at. You know what I'm saying? You know, more or less to the west side, not to the south. You know. But anyway. And we get to read today, maybe, about where those ashes go. I read a little bit. I always stay further ahead a little bit and try not to give you too. I try to say enough without confusing people. But there is an area designated where they actually take the ashes. If we get to it today, we get to it. If not, we don't, and it's still going to be bombed. All right, so here we go. Oh nope, yeah, this is it. This is where we're almost there. Actually, I love it. And all the fat of the calf of the sin offering shall he take from it, the fat that covers the inwards, and all the fat that is on the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, which is on the thighs, and the caul that is on the liver, with the kidneys. Them shall he take away. And then it says, or it shall he take away by the word them. As he of peace offering, so shall the priest offer it on the altar of burnt offering. And they shall take the skin of the calf, and all his flesh with the head, and the extremities, and the belly, and the dung, and they shall carry out the whole calf out of the camp into a clean place, where they pour out the ashes, and they shall consume it thereon, wood with fire, and it shall be burnt on the ashes poured out, or by the word ashes, the outpouring of ashes. Now let's just stop right there for half a second. Roger that this is a sin offering, right? So the whole thing is burnt up. But note that the Most High God is like, you're gonna sacrifice it like a peace offering, right? So they put it on the offering like a burnt offering at first. So they go through all the different processes just to do it right. So they start first. Obviously, you kill the animal, you separate the parts from it, you burn the fat on the altar. Okay, boom. Once you burn the fat on the altar and that's all burnt up, now you're going to take the flesh, you're going to take the dung, you're going to take the skin, and you're going to take all the extremities, and you're going to take that outside, and you're going to burn all that up as the rest of it. You're going to burn it all. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to let the fire consume it. And that's how they go through their whole complete process. You know, and obviously this is the same process they do with everyone else, but it's clearly indicating that they have to do it just like this. You know what I mean? I have to assume that the most skilled ones of cooking, like the people who prepare the food best, are the guys who, of the sons of Aaron, are the ones who are doing the most cooking, like the most sacrifice. It just make sense. And then they may teach like the younger guys as they're coming up, like how to do this, how to do this, how to do this. But you don't want to mess up the process of doing the sacrifice right. So you just show them, you instruct them. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, they didn't know to do this. So I can assume that people were eating fat. They were eating everything. Like people were eating just whatever. Anything goes. See what I'm saying? And people are like, well, how can you say that? I'm like, because they're having to be told not to do that. Because they lived in a place like Egypt where they didn't get to eat red meat like that, but they ate probably everything else. You see what I'm saying? So this is why it has to be distinguished to them like, yo, you don't eat everything. Let's go ahead and keep reading. And this is also for the priest to keep in mind that they're supposed to do righteous sacrifice. Verse 13, and if the whole congregation of Israel trespass, or should be ignorant unwillingly, if the whole congregation of Israel trespass ignorantly, or be ignorant unwillingly, that's what that means in its other translation, and a thing should escape the notice of the congregation, and they should do one thing forbidden of any of the commands of the Lord, which ought not be done, and should transgress, and the sin wherein they have sinned should become known to them, they shall then shall the congregation bring an unblemished an unblemished calf of the herd, for a sin offering. So this is a sin offering. It's not a peace offering, and it's not a burnt offering. No, you're not supposed to be eating this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be burnt all the way up. Everything is burnt. You know, there's a sense where they're supposed to get their portion of stuff, and then there's other offerings where you don't get anything because you didn't do right. You see what I'm saying? And I'm pretty sure people didn't even abide by that all the time. But this is probably further along the line than now, but I just want to point that out, so that way everybody can understand, like, there's a level of righteousness that was supposed to be maintained that was never maintained. It was probably attained throughout different periods, but it was never maintained thoroughly and throughout the times and generations. And this is a fact. Because look at where we're at now. So, having said that, what verse are we in? Verse 13, in the middle of it. Verse 14, excuse me. And the sin wherein they sin should become known to them. Then shall the congregation bring an unblemished calf of the herd for a sin offering. And they shall bring it to the doors of the tabernacle of witness. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the calf before the Lord. And they shall slay the calf before the Lord. And the appointed priest shall bring in of the blood of the calf into the tabernacle of witness. And the priest shall dip his finger into some of the blood of the calf, and shall sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, and from the veil of the sanctuary. This is right in front of the Holy of Holies. And the priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of the incense of composition, which is before the Lord, which is in the tabernacle of witness. And he shall pour out all the blood at the bottom of the altar of whole burnt offerings, which is by the door of the tabernacle of witness. And he shall take away all the fat from it, and shall offer it up on the altar. And he shall do to the calf as he did to the calf of the sin offering. And he shall do to the calf as he did to the calf of the sin offering. So shall it be done. And the priest shall make atonement for them. And understand. You see how it speaks on how one is the priest, and then now it's the people. But it's speaking on like the people all together sinned, and not just like an individual. But I can only assume that it still means when people all by themselves sin. Because sin is sin. It doesn't matter how. The more people who do it, of course, is terrible. But when you sin, it doesn't. You don't change how it feels or how it looks for another person. It's the same thing. Where we at? Verse 21. And they shall carry forth the calf with whole without the camp. And they shall burn the calf as they burnt the former calf. It is a sin offering of the congregation. Okay, here we go. Now we got the priest, the people. Now we got a ruler. And if a ruler sin and break one of all the commands of the Lord his God, doing the thing which ought not be done, unwillingly, and shall sin and trespass, and his trespass wherein he has sinned be known to him, then shall he offer for his gift a kid of the goats, a male without blemish, and he shall lay his hand on the head of the kid, and they shall kill it in the place where they kill the victims, where they kill the victims, where they kill the victims, because they didn't sin. You and I did. They did. We did. The animals didn't sin though, but they're paying for it. So they're the victims. Where they kill the victims for whole burnt offerings before the Lord. It is a sin offering. And the priest shall put some blood of the sin offering with his finger on the horns of the offering of the whole burnt offering. And he shall pour out all its blood by the bottom of the altar of the whole burnt offering. And he shall offer up all his fat on the altar, as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven him. And if a soul of the people of the land should sin unwillingly, once again, it speaks on the group, the people, the individual, nobody's missed. And if a soul of the people of the land should sin unwillingly in doing a thing contrary to any of the commandments of the Lord, which ought not be done, and shall transgress, and his sin should be known to him, wherein he has sinned, then shall he bring a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, not a male. Right on. So this is how they distinguish who's a ruler, who's a regular person. And then the first one, where they sacrifice a calf, that's how they. One of them is for the people, the other one is for the priest. But the priest himself, if a priest sin, it's that serious that a priest is almost like the priest carry the weight of the congregation. Understand that. But they allow for the ruler to have the sacrifice of the male animal, not a female animal. Verse 28. No, verse 29. And he shall lay his hand on the head of his sin offering. And then shall they slay the kid of the sin offering in the place where they slay the victims for whole burnt offerings. One moment. Verse 30. And the priest shall take of its blood with his finger, and shall put on its horns, and shall put on the horns of the altar of whole burnt offerings. And all its blood he shall pour forth by the foot of the altar. And he shall take away all the fat, as the fat is taken away from the sacrifice of peace offering. And the priest shall offer it on the altar for a smell of sweet savor to the Lord. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and his sin shall be forgiven him. Now it starts to break down if people don't have very much money. Okay? Listen to this. Well, not very much money, but what they do have. But I can't get carried away into this next one. I just have to stop. And if he should offer a lamb for his sin offering, he shall offer a female without blemish. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering. This is still the man of the people. And they shall kill it in the place where they kill the victims for whole burnt offerings. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and shall put it on the horns of the altar of the whole burnt offerings. And he shall pour out all its blood by the bottom of the altar of whole burnt offering. And he shall take away all his fat. So this is a female lamb, so thinking that's a typo. And he shall take away all his fat, as the fat of the lamb of the sacrifice of peace offering is taken away. And the priest shall put it on the altar for a whole burnt offering to the Lord. And the priest shall make atonement for him, for for the sin which he sinned, and it shall be forgiven him. Now stop right there. Now the reason why I say that's a typo is because it clearly says that, and if he should offer a lamb for his sin offering, it'll be a female, right? So unless they're saying that his fat being the unless they're giving ownership of the fat of the animal to the man, right? I would have to assume that that's not supposed to be there, and that they wrote it as if it was just, you know what I'm saying, like it's written, like right here, like when it says for the one who's a female, it says, and he shall take away all the fat, right? So it doesn't say that; it says take away his fat, and so that's why I'm like, you know what I mean? I like to point things like that out, whether it's a typo or somebody trying to throw people off. Clearly, you know what I mean. We know that it means a female lamb and not a male one in this instance when it's talking about it. And then also, furthermore, let me just go ahead and put this down. Let's just break down some of these things that we just read. So people have to realize this is about how you're supposed to properly eat your food. If they remember the last time it told us about how you're supposed to saute your vegetables when you cook, and that everything you cook with is supposed to have salt on it. So I'm assuming all these sacrifices, unless otherwise permitted, are supposed to have salt on them too. Right on? I mean, people can be like, well, maybe there's just peace offerings meat. So I'm like, but it said the salt of the covenant on all the sacrifices. So I don't. You feel what I'm saying? I don't want to get too carried away. You know what I mean with the technicalities or how maybe one priest may have discerned it differently. And this is why, once again, you have people who would have sinned for different reasons. Because let's say a priest is following it to the T, and another priest is kind of like, well, we apply it where we can, right? Well, you're going to have more people who sin on the we apply it where we can level. And there's going to be a lot more incidences that take place that probably were preventable or just should have never taken place in the first place. And this is why you have a downfall of a kingdom, because you have people who won't adhere to the statutes and ordinances, the laws that are already established for them. It's like, for example, this is why I laugh when people say what they say about this country, so-called country America, because they don't realize that the same issue that the Hebrews had, they're having now. People don't want to follow the rules. You understand? And so when people don't follow the rules, everything falls apart. Eventually, it can only hold itself up so long while there's only so many people who are going to continue to do what they're supposed to supposedly do. Right. Brothers and sisters, I come to tell you no lies. You don't have to believe everything I say. I don't have to be right about everything I say, but I will tell you this right here. I'm damn sure not all the way wrong. I'm positive about that. Having said that, I salute you. I appreciate all your time. I hope that these couple chapters have been helpful and they're fruitful in the journey. Spiritual Gumbo, out.